Usually when we talk about overthrowing a ruthless dictator, especially, in the realm of science fiction, there is this baked-in expectation of overwhelming kinetic force.
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost like a physics equation or something. You identify the evil empire, the oppressed rebels gather their lasers, they steal the schematics to the starships.
Right, the classic Death Star run.
Yeah, exactly. And the general simply points at the target and says, fire.
It's binary. I mean, it's completely about who has the superior firepower. And that binary it's comforting, honestly.
It is.
We inherently like our conflicts to be visible. We want them to be neatly categorized into these clear battles of physical supremacy where, the good guys have the bigger guns and the bad guys explode in a spectacular cinematic fashion.
Right, it's clean. But then you step into the world of Lloyd Biggle Jr., and suddenly that entire war room of generals is completely thrown out the window.
Oh, it's a total paradigm shift.
It really is. We are looking at a revolutionary landscape that is entirely psychological. It's subversive.
It is the absolute definition of a cultural puzzle rather than a military campaign.
Exactly. And the stack of sources we have in front of us today is going to completely flip how you think about power, rebellion, and just, well, human nature in general.
It really challenges those default sci-fi tropes.
It does. We are diving into excerpts from this really fascinating cultural science fiction analysis, and it focuses entirely on a novel from 1968 by Lloyd Biggle Jr. titled The Still, Small Voice of Trumpets.
Such a great title.
It's so poetic. And I want you to just imagine this premise for a second. Imagine you are tasked with overthrowing a brutal, mutilating tyrant. But, and here's the massive catch, you are not allowed to use a single laser.
Not one.
You have no armies at your back. You can't even use, direct underground political propaganda to stir up the masses.
Yeah, your hands are completely tied by the rules of engagement here. You are stripped of every conventional tool of liberation.
Right. You can only use one thing to bring down the regime, and that thing is art.
Which just sounds wild on paper.
It sounds impossible. But that is the mission of our deep dive today into these sources. We are going to explore how a society's deep-seated appreciation for beauty can actually be weaponized to enact massive political change.
It's a really unique angle.
And along the way, we're going to examine Biggle's incredibly unique, almost anthropological approach to writing science fiction.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start by zooming way out, looking at the macro setting of this universe.
Yeah, I think validating the fundamental architecture of this universe is crucial right from the jump.
Definitely.
Because while this might sound like a neat, quirky sci-fi plot on the surface, what we are really looking at in the source material is a deep, unflinching exploration of human nature.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. It's an examination of political apathy, the psychology of complacency, and the true hidden mechanics of how a revolution actually takes root in the human mind long before anyone picks up a weapon.
So the sources map out a sprawling galactic federation. This isn't just a small collection of planets, right?
No, it's massive. It's a complex network of civilizations. And managing the expansion of this federation is an organization called the Interplanetary Relations Bureau, or the IPR.
Right, the IPR.
Yeah.
And they serve as the governing body, sort of the gatekeepers of this galactic community.
Gatekeepers is a good word for it.
But they operate under an incredibly strict, almost dogmatic set of rules for integration.
Yeah. A planet cannot simply ask to join. They can't just, discover faster than light travel and suddenly be welcomed with open arms by the aliens.
Don't just hand you a membership card.
Right. A planet can only be inducted into the Galactic Federation if it has established a planetary democratic government.
That is the non-negotiable barrier to entry.
Which brings us to the specific world where our story unfolds, the planet Gurnal.
And Gurnal is presented in the analysis as a fascinating case study in political geography. The sources tell us that the planet is essentially divided into two main continents. On one side, you have Lanark.
Right. Lanark is basically the success story. They have already achieved democracy.
They did the work.
Yeah, they went through their growing pains, they figured out self-governance, and they have met the IPR's criteria. But they share the planet with the other continent, which is Kerr.
The problem child.
The ultimate problem child. They are stubbornly, deeply entrenched in an absolute monarchy.
Which means the entire planet is held back. Lanark cannot join the Federation because Kerr refuses to democratize. It's a package deal.
Now, you might think the ITR, with all its advanced galactic technology and endless resources, would just step in and fix Kerr, right?
I mean, that would be the easy route.
Just fly in and take care of the king.
Yeah.
But the IPR operates under a central philosophical tenet that governs every single action they take. And this tenet is the massive hurdle of the entire narrative.
It really sets the rules for everything that follows.
The rule is this: democracy imposed from without is the severest form of tyranny.
That is a staggering line. Democracy imposed from without is the severest form of tyranny.
It hits hard.
It does. It requires us to pause and deeply analyze what Biggle is arguing here through the framework of the IPR. Like, why is this specific constraint so powerful?
Right. Why tie your own hands like that?
Well, if you think about the traditional model of empire or federation building, the most efficient way to bring a rogue state into compliance is force.
Sure.
You invade, you physically topple the monarch, you set up voting booths in the town squares, and you declare the people free.
We've seen that attempted in our own real-world history countless times, haven't we?
Over and over.
A powerful nation invades a less powerful one, claiming to be liberating the populace, installing a friendly, quote-unquote, democratic government, and then just expecting the society to seamlessly adapt to this new paradigm.
And Biggle's IPR philosophy is a direct, scathing critique of that historical pattern.
Which is pretty bold for 1968.
Oh, absolutely. Biggle is positing that freedom isn't a checklist. It isn't an institutional structure that you can just install like a software update on a population.
Right. You can't just force a reboot.
Exactly. If you use overwhelming alien force to eliminate a king and force a population to vote, you haven't actually taught them self-determination. You've taught them the exact opposite.
Wow.
You've just demonstrated that the only way to govern, the only way things change, is through superior physical force. You become the new tyrant. You're just wearing a mask that says democracy.
See, I have to push back on this a little bit, though, or at least play devil's advocate for the poor IPR agents stationed on Gurnal.
Fair enough.
Because the source material notes that the IPR has been failing to incite a democratic rebellion in Kerr for 400 years.
A long time.
400 years. If the IPR has the power, the resources, the advanced sociological understanding to free these people from what we'll soon see is a horrific situation, why sit on your hands for 4 centuries waiting for them to figure it out organically?
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It seems almost negligent.
It sounds absurdly patient, approaching the point of cruelty, honestly. When you have the cure to a disease, withholding it because you want the patient's immune system to figure it out on its own feels deeply unethical.
Right, but think about trying to force a friend to adopt a new lifestyle or a new habit.
Okay.
Maybe you have a friend who really needs to quit a destructive habit or leave a deeply toxic relationship. You know it's genuinely good for them. You can see the answer perfectly clearly from the outside.
We've all been there.
But if you force it on them, if you physically remove the temptation or drag them away from the situation they resent you...
They usually go back.
Exactly. More importantly, the second you aren't there standing over their shoulder and forcing it, the new habit never sticks. They revert right back to the toxic baseline. The motivation, the actual internal rewiring has to come from inside for the change to be permanent.
That analogy strikes at the very heart of the IPR's dilemma.
Yeah.
The Federation knows that if they send in a strike team to assassinate the King of Kerr, the society won't suddenly embrace democratic ideals.
They don't have the context for it.
Right. They won't hold a convention and draft a constitution. They'll just find a new king, or worse, devolve into chaotic, bloody warlordism.
Just a power vacuum.
The cultural foundation for democracy, the internal societal desire for self-governance, simply doesn't exist in Kerr yet. The societal habit hasn't been formed.
But this 400-year failure streak brings up a really crucial, glaring question.
What's that?
What exactly is happening on the continent of Kerr that makes the population so incredibly resistant to change?
Yes.
I mean, 4 centuries is a very long time to endure an absolute monarchy without a single successful uprising, especially when your neighboring continent has already figured it out.
It implies a very specific kind of control.
Exactly. Whoever is sitting on that throne must have engineered a virtually flawless system of control.
They have. The ruler of Kerr has created a masterclass in psychological subjugation. We're introduced to King Rova.
King Rova. Our sources introduce him as the primary antagonist, and he is employing a brutal, yet horrifyingly effective strategy for maintaining absolute control over millions of people.
It's quite dark.
It is. We need to talk about the stick he uses first. the punishment system.
It is visceral, and it is entirely designed around visibility.
The notes detail that King Rova maintains order by periodically mutilating anyone perceived as a malefactor, anyone who steps out of line, speaks against the crown, or commits even a minor political crime.
And the specific mutilation is,
Cutting off the right arm?
crucially, he doesn't just execute them. He doesn't throw them in a dark dungeon where they are out of sight and out of mind.
Right, because execution removes the problem, but it also removes the lesson.
Exactly.
He creates entire outcast communities, villages of the armless.
What's fascinating here is the psychological warfare embedded in that specific choice. Rova isn't just punishing an individual. He is manufacturing a permanent, walking billboard of his absolute power.
It's incredibly calculating.
By letting these armless individuals live and clustering them into these outcast villages scattered around the continent, he ensures that the consequences of defiance are always visible to the rest of the populace.
You can't ignore it.
It is a constant ambient terror. He doesn't need to make grand speeches reminding you he's in charge. You see the physical, bloody evidence of his authority every single time you pass one of those villages.
It's the ultimate deterrent. It's a localized, perpetual reminder of the cost of rebellion. But, if it was just terror, you'd expect a rebellion eventually.
Historically, yes.
Right. Historically, people pushed to the absolute brink of terror will eventually fight back. A society ruled purely by fear is a powder keg waiting for a spark.
You usually have nothing left to lose.
But our sources balance this horror by explaining a bizarre, almost contradictory societal trait of the Kurians that acts as the ultimate dampener on that powder keg. The Kurians are completely, utterly obsessed with art and beauty.
And this is where Rova's genius as an autocrat truly shines. He understands that fear alone breeds desperation, but fear paired with distraction breeds compliance.
Rova isn't just a tyrant with a sword, he is simultaneously a grand patron of the arts.
The greatest patron.
He pours immense resources into aesthetics, music, architecture, and beauty. So the populace is living in this intense dual reality.
It's a masterful manipulation of the population's core cultural values. The analysis describes the Kurians as being largely apathetic to politics. Why?
Because they're too busy looking at paintings.
Basically. Because their entire cultural bandwidth, their entire capacity for passion, is consumed by aesthetics. King Rova understands a fundamental truth about this specific society.
Which is?
If you give the people exactly what they are most passionate about in this case, an absolute abundance of beautiful art, grand musical performances, a societal reverence for aesthetics, they will tolerate almost any atrocity as long as it doesn't disrupt their artistic consumption.
The source analysis calls this a strange social equilibrium. I want to pause on that because it's such a chilling, deeply uncomfortable concept.
It really is.
How does a passion for aesthetics, a love for something as seemingly pure and elevating as art, actually blind a populace to the immense visible suffering of their own neighbors in those armless villages?
It's cognitive dissonance on a massive societal scale.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, when a culture elevates aesthetic beauty above all other virtues, above moral virtues, above ethical obligations, above empathy, the ugliness of reality becomes something to simply look away from.
Wow.
The armless villages are aesthetically displeasing. They represent pain, violence, and asymmetry.
Right, they're ugly to look at.
Exactly. So a society obsessed with beauty doesn't look at a mutilated neighbor and feel righteous anger or a call to justice. They look at them and feel aesthetic revulsion.
That is so dark.
They avert their eyes and turn back to the beautiful, symmetrical, harmonious concert the king has generously sponsored. The art itself becomes a powerful anesthetic.
It's highly relevant if you think about how we navigate information today. Are we ever pacified by the beautiful art of our endlessly curated, aesthetically pleasing social media feeds, while consciously swiping past the ugly, complicated realities of societal rot?
Oh, absolutely. The parallel is striking.
If my feed is beautiful, I don't need to look outside at the ugly reality. The art is the carrot that makes the Kurians actively choose to ignore the bloody stick.
It's a perfectly balanced system.
It's horrifying because it feels uncomfortably plausible. So you have this gridlocked situation, a king who perfectly balances ambient terror and intoxicating beauty, a population entirely pacified by their own aesthetic passions, and an alien federation that strictly refuses to intervene with military force.
Total gridlock.
It is a 400-year stalemate. The lock seems entirely unpickable.
Which sets the stage for a very different kind of intervention. If you can't break the lock with a hammer, you need to find someone who knows how to craft a new kind of key.
The IPR makes a final, desperate play. They decide to send in a very unconventional hero to break this impossible deadlock. Enter Jeff Forzan.
Jeff Forzan is a fascinating protagonist because he fundamentally defies all the expectations of a Golden Age space opera hero.
He's not exactly Captain Kirk.
No, not at all. He's not a military commander. He is a high-ranking officer of the Cultural Survey.
Not a super spy with a license to kill, not a hotshot pilot.
A cultural specialist, an anthropologist of the stars, essentially. He's mysteriously reassigned, given incredibly minimal instructions, and dropped onto the continent of Kur to operate in absolute covert secrecy.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because of that strict IPR rule, the one about not imposing democracy from the outside, Forzan, is given a severe, almost comical handicap.
It's quite the restriction.
He is allowed to introduce only one single technological innovation to the planet. One.
Let's dissect this restriction for a moment because it plays directly into what literary analysts call the scholar as hero trope.
Okay, the scholar as hero.
Yeah, in classic science fiction, especially from the late 1960s, this is a remarkably refreshing pivot. Usually you have the action hero who solves the geopolitical plot by blowing up the enemy base, stealing the superweapon, or physically besting the antagonist in combat.
Right, they punch their way out of the problem.
Exactly. Their ultimate weapon is physical dominance. But Forzan's weapon is his intellect. His entire arsenal consists of his ability to observe, decode, and understand a completely alien set of cultural values.
It's a massive bureaucratic puzzle that has to be solved by a sociologist.
Biggle is elevating the social sciences, sociology, anthropology, cultural studies to the exact same level of narrative importance that other sci-fi writers give to physics, astrophysics, or engineering.
That's a great point.
Forzan has to map the social DNA of Kur. He has to find the single microscopic pressure point where one tiny, carefully calculated change can cascade and topple a 400-year-old autocracy.
I am putting myself in the shoes of someone hearing this plan for the first time, and I have to push back hard.
Go for it.
Is one piece of tech really enough? We are talking about overthrowing an entrenched king who literally chops people's arms off and has maintained ironclad, flawless psychological control for centuries.
It does seem naive.
How on earth does one single gadget, one innovation, fix 400 years of deep-seated cultural apathy? It feels completely disproportionate.
It does feel disproportionate. And that is the exact tension Biggle wants the reader to grapple with. It seems impossible.
Right.
If Forzan introduces a better physical weapon, say a laser rifle, the king's guards simply confiscate it, reverse engineer it, and use it to further oppress the armless villages.
Makes sense.
If he introduces a printing press to mass-produce democratic political pamphlets, the king just executes everyone found reading them because the people don't care enough about politics to risk their lives for a pamphlet.
Because they're apathetic.
Exactly. Any direct political or military technology will instantly be co-opted, crushed, or ignored by the existing power structure.
The king completely controls the physical and political reality of the planet. Any direct attack on those fronts plays right into his hands.
Therefore, Forzan realizes that to beat an artistic tyrant, he cannot fight on the battlefield of politics or warfare.
He has to pivot.
He must fight on the only battlefield the Kurians actually care about, the battlefield of aesthetics. He has to use an artistic weapon.
An artistic weapon?
Think of it not as a battle of forces, but like dropping a single drop of highly concentrated dye into a glass of water. It's just one drop, but if it's the right chemical composition, it slowly permeates and changes the color of the entire ecosystem.
We need to look closely at the societal hierarchy of Kur to understand how this dye spreads. Our sources explicitly state that in this culture, the most revered figures above the generals, above the wealthy merchants, even holding a status right below the king himself, are the court musicians.
They hold immense power.
They are known as harpers.
The harpers hold the pinnacle of social prestige because they are the ultimate purveyors of the society's highest value, which is musical beauty. They are the celebrities, the influencers, and the high priests of Kur all rolled into one.
So Forzan looks at this society. He looks at the immense reverence for the harpers. He looks at the suffering of the armless outcasts. And he has this brilliant paradigm-shifting realization.
It's his eureka moment.
The apathy of the Kurians isn't a lack of energy, it's immense energy directed at the wrong target.
Yes.
To unlock the political will of these people, he doesn't need to lecture them about voting rights or democratic theory. He has to channel the intense passion they already possess for aesthetics into a vehicle for political change.
He has to make the revolution itself beautiful.
And this leads to Forzon's ultimate choice for his one single technological innovation. He decides to use the power of music to ignite a nonviolent revolution.
And this is where the title of the novel finally comes into absolute ringing clarity: the still, small voice of trumpets.
It's such an evocative, deeply poetic phrase.
It really is.
The source analysis explains that this still, small voice refers to the specific artistic solution Forzon introduces. It is a new way to communicate with the oppressed masses, a way to unite them physically and emotionally without ever triggering King Rova's political censors.
He introduces the trumpet.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what Bigelow is doing here is exploring a major, recurring theme in his work, the limits of technology.
Right, because when we usually think of technological innovation in a sci-fi revolution, we think of cloaking devices or hyperdrives.
Big sci-fi gadgets.
But Forzon introduces a brass instrument.
We really need to break down the mechanics of this because this is the core aha moment of the entire deep dive. Why a trumpet?
It's a great question.
How does introducing a trumpet functionally overthrow a king with an army? Let's look at the contrast. The established art form is the harp. A harp is delicate. It's courtly. It requires a quiet, acoustically perfect room. The audience sits in silent, passive reverence.
It is fundamentally the music of the comfortable elite class. A harp is an instrument of isolation and passive consumption.
Yeah.
You can't easily carry it around and play it in a crowd.
But a trumpet is bold, it's brassy, it cuts through the ambient noise of a city.
It commands attention.
Historically, across almost all human cultures, the trumpet or the horn is the instrument used to call people to assemble, to sound an alarm, to announce a march, or to signal a charge.
It's active.
It has a communal, unifying, and inherently active quality to it that directly opposes the delicate, passive strings of a harp.
And we must look at the physical mechanics of playing it. To play a trumpet, you cannot recline lazily in a parlor. You have to stand up.
You have to plant your feet.
You have to use your lungs. You have to project outward.
So Forzon introduces this new sound, this entirely new artistic expression. And because the Koreans are culturally wired to be utterly obsessed with new art, they absolutely devour it. They cannot look away.
It becomes an overnight sensation.
And the king cannot ban the trumpet because he has built his entire persona on being the ultimate patron of the arts.
Right, he'd be a hypocrite.
If he suddenly bans a brilliant, captivating new form of beauty, he shatters his own illusion. He betrays the very foundation of his psychological control over the people.
He is trapped by his own methodology. It is a brilliant, inescapable catch-22.
But the mechanism goes deeper than just a new sound. As the Koreans adopt the trumpet, they start playing together. You don't just play a trumpet softly to yourself, you form sections. You form bands.
And what happens when a group of people form a brass band?
They have to organize. They have to designate a leader to keep time. They have to synchronize their breathing.
They have to physically march in time with one another.
Yes.
Unknowingly, by simply participating in this new artistic craze, the citizens of Kur are learning the fundamental building blocks of collective action.
It's so clever.
A marching band is essentially a peaceful, synchronized army. The people, who have spent centuries looking away from each other to focus on the king's art, are suddenly looking at each other, breathing together, and moving as a unified body.
The art bypasses the logical, fearful part of their brain completely. If you hand a Korean a political manifesto, their logical brain kicks in. They look for flaws, they worry about the consequences, they think about the armless villages, and they burn the paper.
It's too risky.
But if you give them an instrument that makes their soul soar, that makes them feel a shared, resonating sense of triumph with the person marching next to them, it goes straight to their emotions.
It bypasses the ambient terror.
It wakes up a politically apathetic society because it makes them actively feel something together as a collective for the first time in 400 years.
The illusion of their isolation is shattered. Once a society feels united by a shared emotional experience, the illusion of the autocrat's absolute power starts to crack.
Because they finally have each other.
The people realize there is a harmony they can create together, a physical and sonic space they can command that the king cannot control.
And the king's guards are utterly confused because they are looking for weapons.
They're looking for swords and blasters.
Right. They are looking for rebel meetings, but all they see are people making music.
But it's unified music. It's a revolution hiding in plain sight.
It's such an elegant, profoundly sociological premise for a sci-fi revolution. It feels so fundamentally different from everything else being written at the time.
It really stands out.
With the intricate mechanics of that plot resolution unpacked, let's zoom out a bit and examine the architect behind this entire universe.
Lloyd Biggle Jr.
Lloyd Biggle Jr. The sources give us a really great contextual breakdown of his career, his legacy, and where he fits into the pantheon of science fiction. He lived from 1923 to 2002, and he is credited with a very specific, unique contribution to the genre.
He had a distinct flavor.
The analysis compares his impact to another contemporary author, Mac Reynolds.
Right. Mac Reynolds was highly regarded for injecting deep sociological and economic theory into his science fiction.
So less space battles, more space trade.
Exactly. Instead of just space battles, Reynolds gave us space capitalism, space socialism, and complex trade disputes. He expanded the intellectual borders of what sci-fi could be about.
But Biggle took a completely different lane. Just as Reynolds brought in economics, Biggle is best known for introducing the fine arts and the humanities to science fiction.
A much softer touch.
The source material describes his writing style as gentle, thoughtful, and highly reminiscent of the approach of James White, the author famous for his Sector General series, which focused on pacifist, medical problem-solving in space.
It's often categorized as a soft sci-fi approach, but we have to remember that soft doesn't mean weak or intellectually shallow.
Important distinction.
It simply means focusing on the soft sciences, sociology, anthropology, psychology, and the humanities. And the still, small voice of trumpets is cited in our sources as the absolute zenith, the prime example of this anthropological approach.
It's his masterpiece of the style.
Biggle wasn't just writing an entertaining yarn about a space agent, he was exploring a much deeper metaphorical landscape.
The sources mention a really interesting, layered metaphorical analysis of the novel itself. Some literary readings suggest that this entire story, an artistic, subversive revolution against a brutal, controlling king, is actually a metaphor for the author's own existence in the publishing world.
Oh, that tracks perfectly when you consider the life of a creative person.
Yeah.
Especially one working in a genre that was often dismissed as mere pulp at the time. The reading suggests the novel mirrors the immense challenges faced by creators who feel ostracized, ignored, or actively suppressed by a powerful, unappreciative elite, whether that elite represents rigid publishers, dismissive mainstream critics, or just society at large.
So the king, with his rigid control over what is acceptable art, represents the establishment gatekeepers.
Exactly. And the artist represented by Forzan, or Biggle himself, has to find an innovative, subversive way to bypass those gatekeepers.
They have to sneak it past them.
They have to invent a new trumpet to reach the audience directly, to wake them up. It's a narrative about the persistent, undeniable power of creativity to find a crack in a seemingly impenetrable wall and grow through it. Underneath the Galactic Federation procedural, it's a highly personal statement about the function of art.
I love the depth of that reading. But to be totally fair to the comprehensive scope of our source material, we also have to bring up the objective critiques.
Of course.
Because no work of art is without its flaws, and a book published in 1968 is inevitably going to carry some of the stylistic DNA and limitations of its specific era.
It undeniably is a product of its time, and the analysis doesn't shy away from that.
The analysis gives the book a tremendous amount of praise. It highlights the erudite and sharp prose and calls Forzan's musical, sociological solution both memorable and believable.
It's well respected.
But it also points out some significant structural flaws for a modern reader picking it up today. For one, the writing style itself is noted as feeling a bit old-fashioned.
Narrative pacing and stylistic conventions have evolved drastically since the late 60s.
Audiences expect something different now.
What felt gentle, methodical, and thoughtful then might feel a bit slow, mannered, or overly expository to a modern reader who is accustomed to the rapid-fire, kinetic thrillers that dominate modern sci-fi.
Then there is the romantic subplot. The sources mention a relationship that develops between Forzan and a fellow IPR agent named Anne Curry.
Ah, yes.
The critique specifically, and somewhat bluntly, labels this subplot as dated. They do take care to clarify that it's not egregiously sexist in the way some of the more pulp-heavy sci-fi of the mid-century era can be, but it clearly relies on mid-century tropes about gender roles, damsels, and romance that just don't hold up to modern narrative standards.
It feels tacked on.
It really does.
It's a very common artifact of the era's publishing expectations. There was often an editorial mandate to include a romantic angle to supposedly broaden the demographic appeal of a book, even if that romance didn't perfectly serve or integrate with the core sociological themes the author was actually trying to explore.
Furthermore, the analysis points out that the characters themselves outside of Forson and King Rova are somewhat underdeveloped. They are a bit thin.
They're more like sketches.
Right. And the critique attributes this largely to the novel's short length. It's a relatively brief book, and when an author is prioritizing a massive, complex sociological thought experiment, sometimes the deep internal psychology and intricate backstories of the supporting cast get sacrificed simply for the sake of exploring the premise.
You only have so many pages to work with.
Exactly.
If Bigle spends 50 pages meticulously explaining the societal hierarchy of the Harpers, the mechanics of the trumpet, and the chilling horror of the armless villages, he naturally has fewer pages available to develop the nuanced backstory of the love interests or the secondary agents. It's a structural trade-off that conceptual sci-fi often has to make.
So what does this all mean? We have a book with somewhat old-fashioned prose, a dated romantic subplot, and a supporting cast of relatively thin characters.
But we're still talking about it.
Yet here we are. It is still being deeply analyzed, debated, and praised decades after its publication for its sharp intellect and its incredible, unique premise.
This raises an important question about how we interact with, evaluate, and preserve classic science fiction today.
How so?
Do we discard a work entirely because its narrative dressing is out of style? Or do we dig through those dated conventions to find the foundational, brilliant ideas underneath?
I think we have to dig.
I agree. I think the continued longevity and relevance of the still small voice of trumpets proves that a truly profound idea can easily outlive the stylistic limitations of the era in which it was born.
The core themes are just too structurally sound to ignore.
The ideas of nonviolent revolution, the profound, undeniable power of art to physically unite people, and that central, chilling warning that imposed democracy is just another, more insidious form of tyranny, those are not dated concepts.
Not at all.
Those are strikingly, almost uncomfortably relevant right now. Bigle used a sci-fi framework to isolate variables of human behavior that are playing out in our own societies, our own geopolitical landscape, every single day.
It's like a laboratory for sociology. The alien planet of Gurnell is just the petri dish. The human reaction to power, fear, and beauty is the actual subject we're studying.
Beautifully said.
Well, this has been an incredibly dense and rewarding journey. I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really did.
We started by unpacking the rigid, philosophically dense mandate of the Interplanetary Relations Bureau, the profound idea that true freedom cannot be delivered as a gift from an alien ship. It must be internally generated and earned.
We waded through the terrifying paradoxical society of Kerr, examining how an autocrat can weaponize aesthetics.
We examined King Rova's horrific use of visible mutilation to create ambient terror, perfectly balanced against his society's paralyzing, blinding obsession with aesthetic beauty.
Such a delicate, terrible balance.
And we saw exactly how Jeff Forzon, a cultural anthropologist armed with nothing but a deep understanding of human nature and a single brass instrument, managed to braid a 400-year stalemate.
A brilliant, nonviolent, art-driven revolution that relied on breath, unity, and marching in time, rather than lasers and explosions.
It is such a powerful reminder for all of us. The ultimate takeaway from Bigle's work is that true power isn't just about kinetic force.
Right, it's not just physical.
It's not about who has the biggest weapons, the most capital, or the largest army. True power is about deeply, fundamentally understanding what a population values. And if you understand what people truly love, what moves them, you can change the world without firing a single shot.
It leaves you with a profound amount to consider about the world we are living in right now.
It really does.
Think about our modern society. With all our endless streams of digital information, our curated, beautiful algorithms that keep us pacified, and our own unique, modern brands of political apathy.
We have our own Kerr, in a way.
We do. So if a brilliant cultural specialist like Jeff Forzon were dropped onto Earth right now, today, restricted to introducing just one single new way to appreciate art or beauty to snap us out of our complacency and wake us all up, what do you think that still, small voice would be?
What a phenomenal question to end on. We are so conditioned to expect the big, loud, cinematic explosions to save the day, but maybe, just maybe, we should be listening a lot closer for the quiet, subversive, unifying notes of a trumpet. Keep questioning the world around you, keep exploring those hidden mechanisms, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.